Averages can hide reality. The typical household numbers reveal it. America's financial reality is splitting in two, and you can see it in plain data. I want to walk through the stats that define life for the typical American in 2026 and what they mean for your decisions. When you put income, spending, debt, inflation, housing, retirement, and longevity together, you start to see a different picture than the headlines. The financial reality is quietly splitting into one side, feels squeezed by debt payments and a higher cost baseline. The other side compounds through home equity and long-term investing. My goal is to help you understand the split so you can choose the side you want to be on. Right now, the median household income in the U.S. sits at about $84,000, meaning half of households earn more than that and half earn less. That single number does not tell the full story because income changes across the course of life. So I look at household medians by age because that is closer to what most people actually experience. Households under 25 bring in roughly $38,000 to $42,000 a year. By age 25 to 34, median household income jumps to around $62,000 to $66,000. From 35 to 44, income climbs again to about $78,000 to $85,000 a year. Households between 45 and 54 tend to hit peak median earnings around $88,000 to $95,000 a year. From 55 to 64, the typical household earns roughly $80,000 to $86,000 a year. For households 65 and older, median income drops to about $55,000 to $62,000 a year. Even in peak earning years, the typical household is not earning six figures. That becomes important when you layer in the cost of living, debt payments, and the need to save for retirement. If the margin is thin, the plan has to be disciplined because there is not much room for mistakes. What you earn matters, but the surplus you can repeat is what buys you options. Spending tends to follow a similar life pattern. It ramps up in midlife and tapers later. Here is what the typical household spends by age using median figures. Households under 25 typically spend around $28,000 to $32,000 a year. From 25 to 34, spending jumps to about $55,000 to $60,000 annually. Between 35 and 44, typical spending climbs again to roughly $70,000 to $75,000 a year. Spending peaks in midlife from ages 45 to 54 at around $78,000 to $83,000 annually. Households from 55 to 64 tend to spend about $68,000 to $72,000 a year. Households 65 and older typically spend roughly $50,000 to $54,000 per year. These figures represent cost of living only, housing, transportation, utilities, food, and daily expenses. They do not include saving, investing, or contributions to things like retirement accounts or a 529. So when you see a midlife household spending around $80,000 a year just to live, any real wealth building requires earning beyond that and keeping a consistent surplus. That is why retirement saving feels so hard for many people. There is not much left after the basics. Roughly 40 to 45% of households approaching retirement have less than $100,000 saved in retirement accounts. About 1 in 4 working age adults has no retirement savings at all. For many households, that means Social Security becomes the primary plan, not the backup plan. Here is the other side of the picture. While many people feel stuck, another group is compounding quietly. A record number of households have been crossing the $1 million net worth mark in the past decade. Most of that growth has been driven by home equity appreciation, retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs, and steady long-term investing. Let me start with median household net worth by age. For those under 35, median net worth is about $39,000. For those 35 to 44, median net worth is about $136,000. For those 45 to 54, median net worth is about $247,000. For those 55 to 64, median net worth is about $365,000. As we move up 65 to 74, median net worth is about $410,000. Those 75 plus, median net worth comes down to about $336,000. Now, I also like to look at average numbers, not because they describe everyone, but because they show what compounding can produce when it is left alone. Under 35, average household net worth is about $180,000. 35 to 44, about $550,000. 45 to 54, about $976,000. 55 to 64, about $1.6 million. 65 to 74, about $1.8 million. 75 plus, about $1.7 million. Median net worth has been rising faster than average net worth in recent years, which suggests the gains are not only going to the very top. Homeowners have seen massive equity gains since 2020, and retirement account balances are high in aggregate. So despite scary headlines, more households than people realize are quietly becoming millionaires through home equity and retirement account appreciation. The gap widens when one household owns appreciating assets and another household stays exposed to rising costs and higher interest debt. Debt acts like a negative form of compounding. It grows while you sleep, and it steals your future cash flow. Debt is shaping day-to-day life because it turns fixed obligations into a monthly drain on cash flow. Credit card balances are high, and more people are carrying balances month to month instead of paying them off. Interest rates on credit cards commonly sit in the 20 to 30% range or higher. The average U.S. adult owed about $63,300 in total debt in the third quarter of 2025. When you break debt down by age, you see the burden shift student loans and cars early, then mortgages stacked on top in midlife, and even credit cards carried into retirement. What matters most is not the total number. What matters is the ratio between debt payments and income. So I look at the debt-to-income ratio by age. For those under the age of 25, a typical debt-to-income ratio is about 15 to 20%. For those 25 to 34, it is about 18 to 25%. For those 35 to 44, it increases to about 20 to 28%. For those 45 to 54, it goes to 22 to 30%. For those 55 to 64, it drops to about 15% to 22%. Those 65 plus, it drops again to about 8 to 15%. Financial planners usually flag a debt-to-income ratio above about 36% as dangerous. Even before the danger zone, the squeeze can be heavy, especially in the 40s and 50s, when households are juggling mortgages, cars, and family costs. This helps explain why saving for retirement feels so hard and why so many people later rely heavily on Social Security. This is why people feel behind, even when they are doing the right things. Inflation is sticky. Once prices go up, they rarely come back down. Inflation reports are hovering around 2.7%, which sounds pretty reasonable. Even though the inflation rate cooled from the 9 and the 5% levels we saw a few years ago, the higher price levels are still here, from pre-negative 2020 to today. Most everyday expenses are still about 20 to 35% higher overall. Groceries alone are up roughly 25 to 30% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Rents are up around 20 to 30% or more. Home prices rose about 30 to 40%. Mortgage rates went from around 3% to 5, 6, or even 7%. Utilities are still running about 20 to 30% higher than they were a few years ago. Auto insurance is up 30 to 50% or more in many states, and homeowners insurance is up 20 to 40%. If your household spent about $60,000 a year pre-2020, that same lifestyle now costs closer to $72,000 or $75,000 a year. That is the new baseline. The number on paper might look calm, but the cost of life still feels higher. Well, nuance matters here. The more of your big expenses you can lock in, the more you insulate yourself from inflation. A fixed mortgage can insulate you from rising rents and rising home prices, and a paid-off vehicle can reduce how often you reset into higher prices. Housing is where the new baseline becomes painfully obvious. The median home price sits around $410,000 to $430,000. To comfortably afford the median home at today's prices and mortgage rates, households often need closer to $110,000 or $120,000 in income. Back in 2020, a median-priced home with a 3% mortgage meant payments of around $1,300 to $1,400 a month. Today, with a mortgage of 6.5%, the same home often costs $2,600 a month. The typical homeowner has a median net worth of around $390,000 to $420,000. The typical renter has only about $10,000 to $15,000. That is a 25 to 40 times difference in wealth. That payment change is nearly double in just a few years. And even if prices flatten, many buyers are still locked into higher rates, which keeps affordability tight. Not surprisingly, home ownership has fallen among younger adults, and that feeds the widening wealth gap. Home appreciation and mortgage paydown act like a forced savings account over decades, and renters do not get that same built-in engine. Buying a home is not for everyone, but home ownership has been one of the largest wealth-building tools for Americans when the purchase is sensible and the payment is manageable. For many retirees, the home is the largest asset, and a paid-off mortgage can remove one of the biggest monthly expenses. If you want to understand retirement, you have to understand Social Security. In 2026, the average Social Security retirement benefit is about $2,071 per month, or roughly $25,000 a year. For couples where both spouses receive benefits, the combined average is just over $3,200 a month. About 54% of retirees receive at least half of their income from Social Security. About 1 in 4 retirees rely on it for 90% or more of their income. A married couple where both spouses earned an average of about $110,000 a year over their careers could each receive roughly $3,500 a month at full retirement age. That is about $84,000 a year for the household in Social Security alone. On average, Social Security was designed to replace about 40% of pre-retirement earnings for single earners. Most financial planners estimate retirees need closer to 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income to maintain their same lifestyle. So Social Security is meant to be a foundation, not the full puzzle, for most households. The Social Security trust funds are currently projected to be depleted around 2033, unless Congress acts. If that happens, benefits would be reduced to about 77% of current scheduled payments. So a $2,000 monthly benefit would drop to around $1,540 a month. Benefits would not disappear, but the reduction would be real. I do not believe lawmakers would allow this to happen, but the issue is looming and the clock is ticking. Social Security is not going away, but your plan should not depend on a single program carrying the whole load. Retirement is happening later, and the workforce is reflecting it. For decades, the average retirement age hovered around 62 to 63, with many people claiming Social Security early and leaving the workforce. Today, the average has moved closer to 64 to 65, and it is still trending upward. Labor force participation among people 65 to 69 has risen sharply. Participation among those 70 to 74 has more than doubled. Finances tell part of the story, but remote work and less physically demanding jobs also give people a reason to stay connected and engaged. Retirement is being redefined from a full stop into something more gradual for many households. Rather than a full stop, many people are gliding into retirement by reducing hours and staying productive. Most people underestimate how long their money needs to last. Life expectancy at birth is often quoted around 78 years old. But once you hit retirement age, life expectancy goes up. At age 65, the average man is expected to live about 18 to 19 more years to roughly 83 or 84. The average woman is expected to live another 20 to 21 more years, so roughly 85 or 86. About 1 in 3 men who reach the age of 65 will live to 90 or beyond. About 1 in 2 women will live to... For a typical 65-year-old couple, there is roughly a 50 to 60% chance that at least one spouse lives into their 90s. About 1 in 4 couples will have at least one spouse live to age 95 or older. You might need to plan for a retirement that is 20, 25, 30 years or more, because you do not want to run out of money before you run out of life. So what do you do with all of this? You turn numbers into rules you can live by. First rule, use typical as a benchmark and then aim to beat it. The median numbers show where the typical household sits. If you aim to be slightly better than typical consistently, the gap compounds. Second rule, make getting out of high-interest debt a top priority. High-interest debt is a financial emergency hiding in plain sight. If you are paying 20 or 30% interest, you are fighting compounding with a sandbag on your back. Third rule, lock in big expenses when possible to protect yourself from inflation. Inflation hits hardest when you are exposed in every category every month. Locking a fixed mortgage when it makes sense can provide stability that renters do not get. Fourth rule. Understand that home ownership, when feasible, is a powerful wealth lever. You do not need a dream home. You need a payment you can survive. A starter home can become a long-term asset if you buy within your means. Fifth rule. Don't rely on Social Security alone, but don't ignore it either. Social Security is important for the vast majority of households, but it was not designed to cover the full lifestyle for most people. Sixth rule, plan for a longer retirement than you might expect. A retirement that lasts 25 or 30 years is not a rare scenario anymore. Build flexibility into withdrawals and keep some growth in the portfolio. Final rule, consistent habits decide which side of the divide you end up on. Investing regularly, owning assets when possible, controlling debt, and living below your means. The financial game is widening, and the difference is usually habits. Invest regularly, own assets when possible, control debt, and live below your means. Protect your margin, avoid resets, and let time work on your side. When people feel stressed, they often search for a magic answer. The magic answer is usually a steady surplus, a few good assets, and a long horizon. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. When people feel stressed, they often search for a magic answer. The magic answer is usually a steady surplus, a few good assets, and a long horizon. In my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. In my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. If you can keep yourself in the game, in my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. In my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. The goal is to keep your expenses predictable, your debt low, and your investing automatic, so you can stay consistent in good markets and bad markets. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. In my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. When people feel stressed, they often search for a magic answer. The magic answer is usually a steady surplus, a few good assets, and a long horizon. The goal is to keep your expenses predictable, your debt low, and your investing automatic, so you can stay consistent in good markets and bad markets. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. When people feel stressed, they often search for a magic answer. The magic answer is usually a steady surplus, a few good assets, and a long horizon. When people feel stressed, they often search for a magic answer. The magic answer is usually a steady surplus, a few good assets, and a long horizon. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. The goal is to keep your expenses predictable, your debt low, and your investing automatic, so you can stay consistent in good markets and bad markets. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. The goal is to keep your expenses predictable, your debt low, and your investing automatic, so you can stay consistent in good markets and bad markets. The goal is to keep your expenses predictable, your debt low, and your investing automatic, so you can stay consistent in good markets and bad markets. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you. The country is loud about extremes. Your plan should be quiet and repeatable. In my experience, temperament matters as much as intelligence. A simple plan you can follow beats a perfect plan you abandon. If you can keep yourself in the game eventually starts working for you.